Punitive restraints?
We do not actually use punitive restraints. We use restraints. Punitive implies restraints are for punishment. Restraints are never used for punishment. Restraints are used for protection. They are used for the protection of the prisoner from harming themselves or for the protection of others from being harmed by the prisoner.
But Tim Souders wasn't harming anyone, and this prison report shows that it was his attempt to break the stool and flood his cell that led to the authorization to put him in top-of-bed restraints.
You're going to be in a restraint. It depends on you how long you're in these, okay? You can't flood your cell. You can't do that type of stuff, right? We put you in restraints to kind of control your behavior.
We've seen cases where people have been in restraints on and off, day after day after day. And I have not found a mental health expert who has told me that that's a good idea.
It is on and off. People are removed from restraints. Even prior to that, people were removed from restraints at a maximum of every 2 hours and would get up and walk around.
2 hours? We checked the surveillance tape. Souders was up some of the time, but we found he was restrained for stretches of 12 hours, 16 hours, and 17 hours. Tim Souders had bed sores. On the third day in restraints, Souders resisted for the first and only time, complaining bitterly about the hours in chains.
I am tired of this. 18 hours is not justified.
Recently, Michigan's corrections director, Patricia Caruso, suggested limiting the total time in restraints to 6 hours.
Federal judges described that as trading 6 hours of evil for unlimited evil. Evil is evil, he's saying. You're smiling.
No, I
Surely
don't.
You take that seriously.
I absolutely take that seriously. Prison is a difficult environment. I have correctional officers who become accustomed to having urine and feces thrown on them by prisoners, who have prisoners who are so injurious that they will open their body to remove organs from it. And so we have to rely on our responsibility to keep people safe.
But Michigan prisons have not been safe for mentally ill prisoners who have died needlessly. At least one starved to death, and others died of dehydration like Souders. Jeffrey Clark, a paranoid schizophrenic serving time for robbery, died of thirst in solitary. His sister, Benita Clark Murphy, pored over the investigative reports of his death.
There are reports that he had his mouth up against the plexiglass window, begging and pleading for water and air, and for someone, again, to turn a deaf ear and a blind eye to that. That's why I say Jeffrey was tortured.
Clark Murphy filed suit against the state. She claims that the warden told the family that her brother died of an infection.
We buried Jeff not even knowing what happened.
It seems that the prison officials expected to tell you that this was natural causes and that you'd just leave it alone.
Absolutely. And that they were so wrong.
Clark was locked in solitary in the heat of the summer with his water turned off. And 4 years later, the heat index in solitary was over 100 when Souders' water was turned off. Souders became delusional, refused water when offered, but not even that was a medical emergency to the staff.
Souders has refused. Officer asked him if he needed water. He replied, no.
After Souders' death, federal judge Richard Insland, who oversees the prison, wrote that inmates are exposed to an unauthorized death penalty at the hands of a callous and dysfunctional healthcare system that regularly fails to treat life-threatening illness.
I understand that it's easy to take individual cases and to sensationalize them and, relentlessly replay the facts of an individual case. But I also think it's unfair.
But, Director, fair to say, people starve to death and die of thirst in your prisons.
Any death, any incident like that, in our custody is a tragedy. I will not deny that. It is not. It certainly isn't something that we set out. I mean, we have people come to us dying.
They don't come to you dying of thirst and dying of starvation. How can that happen under your custody?
I'm not going to address cases that are under litigation. I cannot do that.
The Souders case is under litigation. His mother, Teresa Vaughn, is suing. She says the prison never told her how her son died. She found out in the Detroit Free Press.
I hesitate to bring this up, but you have seen the videotapes of your son's last days. When you see those videotapes,
The ones I have nightmares about?
what do you think?
I cannot believe anyone would treat another human being that way at all. That they can watch over a 4-day period, slowly declining, slowly dying before their eyes.
Do you think the guards meant to kill your son?
I don't believe anybody meant to kill Tim. I don't believe that they meant to hurt Tim, but they did. They did hurt him, and he did die. He's not coming home, he's not coming back, and he is gone. And he was only 21 years old.
Since we first brought you this story, guards who kept Jeffrey Clark locked up while he was dying of thirst were found guilty of gross negligence. The Clark family was awarded almost $3 million. The legal case over the death of Timothy Souders is still pending.
Wow.
That was a tough one.
That was a tough one, and that is a tough one, and I hope you were able to stay through this, and
And the thing too is now make sure you go on nlhome.org and check out the BBC. Because
Exactly.
this shows you the same type of stuff going on in Florida, in Texas, and you'll see they beat a man to death. It's really important that you see this. So that when you hear only the worst of the worst are in these prisons, the worst of the worst are some of these correctional officers.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happens. They get desensitized. I don't know.
Oh, absolutely.
And they turn into animals, and it's too
Well, just
bad.
look at these guys
You
that
know.
you just saw in the video.
Right.
I mean, you lost your compassion and your humanity. He was a mentally ill human being. With a red, he's not eating, he's not drinking. Consequently, he's going to
And
die.
he's gonna die.
And you couldn't see it. That's outrageous, you know?
Well, and this is why, again, the National Religious Campaign Against Torture is NACAT is doing this to go into the prisons to stop this kind of abuse and also to educate the public that this is going on. Most of our people don't know this is happening in the United States. They are totally unaware of this. You know, years and years ago was the dream, I thought, when we were doing stuff in Walpole. You got the media in, the media would see how abusive it is and everything else.
And they
things
spoke
would-
up.
and things would change, okay? I never thought that things would change for the worse. You know, I mean, I couldn't, you know, what started out to be, you know, a mission I thought that was a good thing and everything else like that has, in many respects, turned out to be a horror show for many. And
Well,
this
the
is-
prison industrial complex evolved. That's what the problem was. And it was about money, not about
and it's
rehabilitation.
exactly.
And that's our problem. And this is the beauty, is that you got to get your congregations to join NACAT.
Well, you know, they're in the midst of doing a major campaign right now, which you know that I'm involved with. One of the founding members of the with the letter writing and the public relations and stuff like that. Heather Rice is their project director. Wonderful young lady that is heading up she's the associate director of policy, and the National Religious Campaign Against Torture is based in Washington, D.C. Yeah. In fact, it's 110 Maryland Ave in Suite 502, Washington, D.C. They even have a phone number. You can get them, which is 202-547-1920. And
Do it again.
and it's 202-547-1920. You can also